You're listening to Contesting Wrestling, Minisode 7, I guess, something like that. November 22nd, 2019 is when this is dropping. We're going to go over a few things, but first I just want to address, for a while now, Doc and Ben have both been telling me to, I need to start watching a serial. I need to start getting into the habit of watching a some wrestling show every week so I can get into the habit of how to follow storylines in that way and stuff.
And have the experience of a wrestling
fan.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So they had been suggesting NWA Power, several R's at the end, mostly because it's an hour long, which is good for me. So I watched the first episode, and I generally wasn't nuts about it. It was a little old school for me. The characters a little generic, but I gotta say, normally I don't really care for commentary, but there's a commentator on this NWA that this guy Jim Cornette, who I mean just watched this one episode, but I'm going to assume that in all subsequent episodes everything's fine, that he continues to be great, because I really enjoyed him, and I feel like you guys are kind of giving me a look.
So,
I don't know what's
Jim
going on? What
Cornette.
happened?
he is no longer a commentator on NWA Power.
Yeah.
Oh no, he died.
No, he did not die. He did not die.
And scene. I know
Right.
what happened, and it's fucked up, and I'm glad that
Yeah.
NWA did the right thing.
They did, yes.
Yeah, I was skeptical that you were going to like Power that much, at least the first episode. I think it took a while for me. I've watched like a little more, like 4.5 at this point. And it wasn't until the third episode that I felt like there was really a diversity of characters that were interesting and stuff. But yeah, one thing I've also come to learn, which I'll still probably watch it, but which sours me on it a little bit, is I knew that Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins was one of the people in creative, but I didn't quite know the depth to which he had gone down the alt-right rabbit hole.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, it's really,
He's nuts.
It's not good.
So I'm probably still gonna watch the show too, mostly because I've trained with some of the people there. I know them. I want to support that. But we were thinking of getting Evan to watch it, try and get into it, cover it weekly. We're not gonna do any of that now. That's just not gonna happen. And so
Instead,
that's kind
we're
of a
gonna
drag.
make him watch 4 hours of wrestling every week.
A 5 if he watches Dark.
I will say, I will also say, it's fucked up that he said something unbelievably racist.
Yeah.
It seems like NWA did the right thing. It seems like
within
they fired
12
him.
hours, they got him to resign. It was just unacceptable. Like, specifically what Jim Cornette's problem is like, he's old-fashioned, and like, that sounds dismissive, but I don't mean like that. I mean, he thinks he's like a progressive liberal, and he would have been if he said, 30 years ago in many of his things, but he's put up such a wall to the present that he hasn't accepted a new idea into his head for decades, that we all just have to leave him behind.
I can't believe that they didn't catch that in editing, though, to begin with. It's not a live show.
I can believe they didn't catch it in editing. Editing is done by one guy, and that's not what he's looking for. And people are like, oh, it's been sitting in a can for a while. Yeah, it's been sitting, waiting. That's that.
I will say, for
like
what
death mold.
Yeah.
For what I saw, I could tell that it was good wrestling. I didn't watch the whole thing. I tapped out about halfway through. Could tell that it was good. I appreciated the fact that they were sort of snappy, quick little matches.
Yeah.
I like that it's a small show. It feels more intimate.
It's studio wrestling is the style.
But I just I was thinking about how when I was a teenager in my early 20s, I really loved stoner rock and kind of doom metal, like Caius and Electric Wizard. I still like Electric Wizard, but they're pretty much the only band in that genre that I still really enjoy. And what kind of got to me after a while is that there's 8 riffs all together, and it's just putting those same 8 riffs in slightly different variations over and over and over again, and that for me it became repetitive and a slog. But then also, like, a lot of people, including one of my co-hosts on this podcast, who still really enjoys a lot of stuff, I think that there is a nostalgia factor. There is a...
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I still only listen to, like, 5 of
Yeah.
those bands. One of them being Electric Wizard.
well, because also Electric Wizard actually made an effort to grow somewhat musically over the last 20 years.
For me, it's like, it's not so much that I listen to a whole lot of sludge and doom anymore, but if I have to listen to any generic type of music,
Sure.
it will be that.
That's that one. Yeah. And that's, I feel like I'm watching it, and it seems like all of the characters in NWA are sort of the like kind of standard wrestling archetypes.
Yeah, that's fair.
And which is like not a bad thing if you are going. There was one of the little promotional clips in the ad breaks. There's a guy who's like, "Oh, it's like I'm watching a show from 30 years ago, but with today's energy." And I'm like, "Oh, that's who this is for. It is for people. It is rather explicitly for people who have a nostalgia factor."
Yeah, and as I said, in later episodes, the cast does diversify quite a bit. Already, I think you told me that the last scene you watched was the introduction of Eddie Kingston into the show.
Yeah, who just as a character seems fucking great.
Yeah, Eddie
He's
Kingston
awesome.
is a fully fleshed out character who's been wrestling for 16 or 17 years. He's from Yonkers. He's very good. He's been an asset to every place he's gone as far as like stories go and like just being a character.
And it's kind of cool seeing him and Homicide, these New York dudes, within this sea of like crew cut Southerners.
Yeah, right. I like how in many of the episodes, Homicide is wearing an NWA t-shirt, but for the rap group.
I have 2 observations about NWA. One, Nick Aldis.
Yeah.
All this.
Nick Aldis looks like Hugh Jackman divided by Jeremy Corbyn.
That's fair.
If you get a picture up of those 2 guys, you will agree with me.
Divided because he's less than... He's only a portion of Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. He's still ripped as Hugh Jackman, but like it's like in terms of his handsomeness, it's like I guess, or maybe it's more like Jeremy Corbyn and then somebody turned up like a fader on the Hugh Jackman part of that. It's hard to describe, but if you look at a picture of all 3 of them at the same time, you'll understand what I'm saying. And then by far my favorite thing in the 25 minutes that I watched by a huge margin was the ad for Austin Idol's 100% legitimate wrestling college.
Oh, yeah.
But I am sure there's no risk at all
man.
in attending
Oh,
that
God.
place. Holy fuck.
That's one of the cool things is there's these ads and some of them are real and some of them aren't, but there's no difference in how fucking bizarre and whacked out the real and fake ones are.
Was that real or not?
That one's real.
Okay, yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
thought.
he's
That's
running
what I
a
thought.
wreckling school.
waffles and tire irons is not real. I don't know if
Okay,
you got up
I
to
did
that.
not
have
make it
seen
that
one.
far.
Yeah, Austin Idol is an old-timey wrestler. He wrestled mostly in the middle of the country and like Memphis and all around. And he retired fairly young. He had a very good-looking physique. And he got out. And like he's made appearances at conventions and so on. And they were like, hey, you want to brand yourself with this show? And he's like, sure. So there you go.
So the other observation I wanted to make about Power that you didn't see enough of it to really get that I think is cool and innovative is that the distinction between faces and heels isn't nearly the distinction between faces and heels isn't nearly as clear cut as in other wrestling. And that's been true in other places, but to have such an old school dynamic but also these like shades of gray, I find to be fresh and novel.
And I genuinely, obviously, I didn't watch enough to really judge the whole thing, but I did really get the vibe that I was like, oh, this seems like this is good. It is just not for me, at least where I am in my stage of wrestling knowledge and enjoyment.
So what we're going to do is we're going to have you watch NXT and AEW every week, which is going to be a much bigger time sink, but I think you're going to enjoy them more.
It
And
is.
like these 2 shows are broadcast both on television at the same time every week, which is great for wrestling fans. It's not really like the old Monday Night Wars, but people can pretend it is, and that makes it fun.
Well, not as many people watch things live on TV anymore.
Yeah, and the TV rating isn't nearly a be-all and end-all as it was in the late 90s. Like even on, people can go down the ratings, but people will still watch NXT on the WWE Network. People will still
It's
DVR.
on the next day.
Yeah, people still DVR or watch Dynamite in other ways, you know.
It's on Hulu.
It's on
Dynamite,
Hulu.
the next day also.
But it's really motivating both companies to put their best show on, because there's somebody, if they put a bad show on, nobody's going to watch it.
And it'll be cool because this is what, hardcore wrestling fans are paying attention to now. So you're going to see that development along with them. And
yeah, don't bother watching Raw. Watch NXT and watch AEW.
Let's hope that I don't get a job again anytime soon and remain financially insecure.
We'll see how this goes.
as long as Laura's cool with it.
Yeah, on an unrelated note, please, dear God, support us on Patreon, please.
I mean, on that note, we do a second full episode every week for our patrons. At the $5 tier, you get our episodes several weeks in advance. So yeah, please do. We have a lot recorded, and we think we're worth it.
And we've got big plans for 2020. We've got big plans for a whole bunch of cool shit that is going to go right behind that paywall.
No investment from Master P, though, but,
No.
not everyone can be House of Glory Wrestling.
I suppose not.
So,
if you are a big hit rapper from the 90s that would like to invest in a wrestling podcast, at me.
Yeah,
at us at Contesting W on Twitter.
hopefully Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Yes,
We're big fans of Bone Thugs
But
and Harmony.
anybody, it's
Come
fine.
on.
Mace,
yes.
Casey, or JoJo.
Either one of you.
Even one of the,
I guess they were
lesser
singers.
known Bone
They were,
Thugs. Flesh. Come on, Flesh and
please.
Bone. Yeah, all right.
Yeah. Anyone Wu-Tang affiliated.
Oh, yes.
One of the Killer Bees.
Yeah, even you, God.
Even you got.
Even you, God.
Master Killer.
Several of the kids of the Wu-Tang have formed their own rap group now.
I saw that.
Yeah, I've not checked them out. I got to check that out.
I got to see Young Dirty Bastard when I saw Method Man and Redman.
Was he
came
good?
out. Yeah, it was
cool.
It was good.
Cool. I do enjoy some ODB. I find him to be kind of the free jazz of rap, because his stuff doesn't fit into any given stanzas or rhyme, but it works very well. He just kind of goes on and on, like so many people I've heard ranting on corners in New York before.
The drummer on on our theme song, who is one of the best musicians I've ever met in my entire life.
Oh yeah,
Mr. Dan Kerfers. You should check out his music. It's fantastic.
Latif Beats on Instagram.
He would often tell me, without a trace of irony, because he's not a guy who really is ironic ever. He's a very genuine and authentic guy. He would always tell me that he really believed ODB might have the most soulful voice, the most soulful singing voice ever. Yeah. And there's an argument to be made. There's an argument to be made for that.
It's very genuine.
Reflecting a little bit on episode 7.5, where we had Tom Specialty Frazier, owner and promoter of Imperial World Wrestling, on as our guest, we talked about the Fiend Seth Rollins Hell in a Cell match. So they did the rematch, last man standing match in Saudi Arabia. I didn't watch it, but I saw the highlights, and they actually gave the title to the Fiend. He won it on this one. It was on Halloween, which I guess is appropriate, except they were in Saudi Arabia, where they don't celebrate Halloween.
I'm pretty sure that's not observed.
No.
So instead of giving him the title at the really hot pay-per-view that people were paying attention to, they gave it to him at the thing that I think fewer people in the States watched.
Oh, certainly.
And that people already, I at least already didn't care by then.
Yeah.
But anyway, the Fiend's the champion. He's defending the title this Sunday at Survivor Series against Daniel Bryan, which is the best possible match he could really have, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Bray Wyatt's best singles match to date was against Bryan, so we'll see how that goes.
I'm sure Bryan has some ideas as to what to do with the character.
Now that I have seen a couple matches with Bray Wyatt, still baffled as to why you would put a mask on him. It's like if Edge wore a mask. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like a huge part of what he's doing is facial expression. Brock Lesnar had a mask. That's fine. Brock Lesnar has two facial expressions. Yeah. So you just need
And not just a mask, but a mask that completely covers his face. Doc, your father knows
Yeah.
a guy who made masks for the WWE.
He's a guy who used to anyway. He made like the Mankind mask, I think, and maybe one of the Kane masks back in the day.
So I remember. So your dad brought him up once on Facebook. Stanley Allen Sherman, the creator of the Mankind mask. We got to talk to him a little bit on Facebook, and he mentioned that they had tried to get him to design the original Kane mask, but he wouldn't do it because they wanted a mask that completely covered Kane's face. He did design the Undertaker mask that Undertaker wore for a while when his face was crushed by Mabel.
And that was only a half mask, you know.
And the mask that Kane would eventually wear later on, when they realized they needed to show more of his face to show his expressions, looked a lot like that one.
It did, yeah.
So yeah, it's hard. I mean, I think there's a couple of instances where a full face covering mask has worked, but very rarely. And with Bray Wyatt, it's kind of baffling.
That's I don't have a problem inherently with people wearing a mask. It just seems like Bray Wyatt is somebody who has an incredibly expressive face, and who a big part of how he expresses his characters is through having a very expressive face. And so covering it for him, it seems like it would create a real weakness. That's my issue with it.
I can see how Vince also doesn't think that the Bray Wyatt Mr. Rogers character is threatening enough to wrestle in the ring.
Oh, that's a real lack of imagination.
It's true. It's true.
Because especially if Mr. Rogers had been fucking shredded, just if Mr. Rogers could fucking press 450 or something like that.
Did you watch that morning show with Bray Wyatt that I sent to the group chat?
No.
All right.
Sorry.
Well, watch it.
Okay.
He's very intimidating and threatening to the morning show team.
Well, he's a large dude also, you know. He's a big, wide dude who's in the best shape of his life, I might add.
Sometimes it can be hard to keep up on everything in the group chat.
Yeah, it's okay.
Especially because I go to bed so much earlier than you guys that I'll wake up and there's 26 messages.
Well, we'll pointedly have our wrestling conversation in there just so you see what that looks like.
You're not quite ready, I know, to just talk and think about wrestling all the time like we do.
I am. This is going to be a good test starting to watch AEW and NXT and stuff like that, because I hit a hard roof. I have made the mistake in the past of, watching all of the wrestling that I have to watch on the day we record. Yeah. And that's really unfair because I have a 3-4 match cap.
Yeah.
I think at this point in time that I'm going to have to bump that up to watch more stuff. But after
we'll see what the TV show structure does for you.
After about 90 minutes, 2 hours lately, I'm just it could be the greatest match ever.
We have to start watching wrestling with you, because watching wrestling alone with a notepad is not the best way to actually experience
it. I barely watch anything like that. Sitting there watching NWA with notes, and I'm I should go do something else, or I should do something while I'm watching this, because I have a pathological need to feel like I'm doing as much as I can at any given moment.
I need to find a Twitch streamer to put on so I can comfortably sit there and ignore them while I play other video games.
Oh, yeah. Oh, big time. Oh, I am on episode 80 of the Super Beard Brothers Bloodborne series. It's just
terrible. Don't be like Randy Orton when you're on Twitch.
What?
He dropped an N-bomb.
Really?
Just because that's probably how he talks when he's playing video games with his friends.
There's been because of the circumstances around it, and this is where I like to say context matters. There's been almost no backlash because of it. People are just like, "Oh, Randy's an idiot," and they're right. Randy's an idiot.
This is why I don't fucking understand multiplayer games and multiplayer culture. First off, I play video games to alienate myself from society. If I'm playing video games, that's not a time when I want to I don't want to have other people see me, or so they could judge. I'm in my hole where I'm I'm going for an ego death.
Yeah.
Too, kind of, with video games, where I can forget that I exist in the world for a little while. So then, like, yeah, playing online with with fucking like 15-year-olds slinging racial epithets, or professional wrestlers who are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions.
Yeah,
Definitely
Orton's
millions.
worth millions.
Orton's definitely worth millions. He's one of those guys with 7-figure deals, I'm sure. Especially now.
Jesus, you know what? If you play video games and you talk shit, get a goddamn thesaurus.
Right.
Like go on
Thesaurus.com.
well that too. But or like Urban Dictionary or something, learn some new curse words. Don't fucking throw that shit around. Like you don't have to.
We mentioned that Bray Wyatt is a third-generation wrestler. His father is IRS, Mike Rotundo. His grandfather, his mom's father, is Blackjack Mulligan, who is father of Barry Windham, who was in a tag team with Mike Rotundo. So I guess, they were buddies. Rotundo married Wyndham's sister, and now we have Bray Wyatt and his brother, Bo Rotundo.
This is getting biblical.
Yeah, that's how wrestling works, man.
It is very much still a mom and pop business because of the nature of it and what it takes to understand it, So, in a lot of businesses, when somebody's kids come along, you think, it's just nepotism. And in wrestling, it's like you really if you're born into it, you learn a lot and you have more of an easy entrance, And if you're not very good, most of the time you do get dropped pretty quickly.
And it's also just it's a world. If you're born into a world, if if your parents run a restaurant, guess what? You're gonna fucking work in the restaurant at some point in your life.
It's like being born into the circus, more like it. But yeah.
So we mentioned that Seth Rollins' character was always that he was like the Beast Slayer or the Monster Slayer, whatever. It started as the King Slayer when he feuded with Triple H.
Right.
So you can imagine how nothing. That feud, it's
oh wow,
two of the most vapid wrestling characters in history. Yeah. I mean, Rollins has way less to him than Triple H does. I think. Wow, but
that is I believe that based on the one Rollins match that I've watched so far. It's one of the worst things I've ever seen. But it's hard to imagine somebody significantly drier and more vanilla bread, and that not even because you know what, vanilla and bread are both delicious things. So
I like those
cornmeal things. Just uncooked cornmeal.
Uncooked cornmeal, the kind of stuff you brush off your fresh bread.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I don't know, we talked about the Spirit Squad, and maybe I thought I'd give an update on them. Dolph Ziggler was one of the members of the Spirit Squad. He's still in the company, doing pretty well. He was tag team champion recently with Bobby Roode.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, yes, but it doesn't matter.
Ken Doane, who was Kenny, is now in Beyond Wrestling, where he's like a crazy monster heel.
He was only 19 back then. He's still in the prime of his athletic career. He could still show us a lot.
And the rest of them, who knows?
So that is a wrestling promotion, right? You don't mean
yes.
He's not
beyond
concept. Yeah, okay.
Beyond Wrestling, running their show Uncharted Territory on independentwrestling.tv every week.
The rest. I think Mike Mondo might still be wrestling.
Mike Mondo's still wrestling. Yeah, Mike Mondo's still wrestling. Johnny Jeter got out.
He was my favorite.
Yeah, mine too. And the other one, there was one more who got out.
Oh, Mitch could never
Nick
really
Mitchell.
do much of anything.
Yeah.
We should take a moment to promote Tom's show again.
Yeah, I was going to do that at the end, but sure.
Yeah. I feel. Do we have a lot more stuff?
I don't think so.
I have 3 more very small points.
You should go for it. We need to keep these minisodes mini.
I always feel I feel guilty at how much more prepared Ben is for these minisodes than I am. You come here with pages of notes, and I'm just I kind of listen to it again.
I'm not even going through all of my notes. I decided that some things aren't worth going into. But there's a couple. One, I wanted to make a small correction, which is sort of apropos. I said that we don't mince words and we don't split hairs. What I meant was we don't split hairs.
Right. We mince words quite a lot.
No, wait, hold on.
I try not to mince words.
No, wait, hold on. I said we don't mince words and we do split hairs.
Yes, that's
accurate.
We
do split hairs,
yes.
We don't mince words. Sorry. Okay. I'm going to start again. I said that we were into mincing words and splitting hairs. We are into splitting hairs. We are not into mincing words.
We are not into mincing words. It does happen sometimes.
I think it does happen.
Through no,
Maybe.
we're not trying to mince the words.
I think we say things pretty directly. We come out with things.
Generally,
We
I
say what we
guess.
feel.
I will say I have to spend a disproportionate amount of time cleaning up my dialogue here, as opposed you. I feel like you guys speak pretty clearly. You also both speak for a living in a way that I don't.
It's not about speaking. I mean, mincing words is like not saying what you really think.
Oh no, that's also.
Yeah.
Oh no, I always attempt to say what I really think. Whether or not I express it accurately is a different thing
So
altogether.
this was an example of us splitting hairs.
Well,
Which
yeah,
is
which nobody is here to dispute the fact that we split hairs.
Oh
That's
yeah.
kind of the
Why
whole
else
point.
are we all sitting here talking about this bullshit? Come on.
That's kind of what philosophy is, really,
Yeah.
when it comes down to
It's also kind of what podcasting is.
Completely.
For the most part. Most podcasts are at least somewhat in the hair splitting genre.
If people like us, they'll listen to whatever we're talking about. If people don't like us, they won't. So let's split those hairs if we feel like
Exactly. But you're right. We don't mince words because we respect you, the listener. We want to maximize your enjoyment and information absorption.
it. Yes.
You know what? I feel like I minced the fuck out of those words there.
So one other thing, as you're watching AEW, you should look out for this. So we talked about how they are keeping win-loss records, which is something that wrestling doesn't usually do. And the reason why they don't usually do it is it kind of creates booking problems occasionally. So they've just announced that at the end of the year, they're probably going to wipe the record clean and start over. And they'll
Essentially
probably end up
making
doing that every year.
seasons.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
which is
So,
good. You can tell long-term stories like, oh, this guy's having a bad year, man.
And we'll see because, they started pretty late into the year this time. So it'll be interesting to see with a full year of record keeping how that works.
One thing that excites me about trying to do AEW is that there seems to be one of the central figures in AEW is a wrestler I am intrigued by, Mr. Christopher Jericho.
Ah, yes.
Le champion.
Mostly because I haven't really seen a lot of Jericho wrestle, but there is a phenomenon related to Chris Jericho that I find fascinating, which is wrestling fans that I encounter, both in real life and on Twitter, all say the same thing about Chris Jericho, which is that people always say, well, okay, so yes, technically Chris Jericho is the best wrestler who's ever lived. And I want to unpack that like we just got back from a 3-month vacation.
Yeah.
It might take several episodes of the podcast to go over the history of Chris Jericho because he has reinvented himself so many times, and that's part of what makes him so great.
All right, so that'll be our another 2-parter.
All right, so we do want to plug one more time, and we'll probably do it again the next minisode because it'll be right before the show.
Yeah.
Imperial World Wrestling Cheat Code on Saturday, November 30th at Martin Luther School in Maspeth, Queens, New York. Check it out. Layla Hirsch will be wrestling. Ultraviolet will be wrestling. Rembrandt Lewis, Danny Limelight, and some others. So many others. So check it out. I'll be there, and it should be a really good time.
I will definitely be at the next IWW thing. It's right next to Thanksgiving, so I don't know. Sorry, Tom. Sorry.
Yep.
I might cut this whole bit. This has been Contesting Wrestling. Thank you so much. Follow us on Twitter @ContestingW. Support us on Patreon, patreon.com/contestingwrestling. Get at least one premium episode every week.
Ow, have mercy.
We love you. Good night.